Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Surviving Out of Spite. My name is Samantha Sauer, and I'm your host. Before getting into this episode, I do want to let everyone know that this episode includes an open and honest conversation about sex and intimacy. While listener discretion may be advised, we do encourage you to tune in when you feel more comfortable engaging with this topic. That said, intimacy is about so much more than sex, but living with a chronic illness can make every part of it complicated. In today's episode, I get to sit down with Ali, where we were able to dive into some unspoken realities of intimacy and chronic illness. Anywhere from navigating medical challenges that affect sexual health to building self-confidence, self-love, and connection. We explore why open communication with our partners matters, how self-care practices can help reignite that desire, and the importance of normalizing conversations around intimacy in the chronic illness community and beyond. Whether it's emotional closeness, physical intimacy, or self-pleasure, this conversation encourages our listeners to see sexual well-being as a vital part of your overall health. Because intimacy isn't just about what happens in the bedroom, it's about reclaiming confidence, connection, and joy in every form. Enjoy. Well, hi, Ali. Thank you for being here with me today. I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to our community because I know you are primarily in the rheumatoid arthritis space. So our gastroparesis community might not be aware of what an awesome advocate you are. So please, whatever information about yourself that you would like to share, we're happy to hear it.
Awesome. So thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here. So my name is Ali DiGiacomo. My Instagram is Another Day with RA, and so is my TikTok. I started bringing awareness to chronic illness back in 2018 when I felt very alone dealing with having a chronic illness as a young adult. So I started creating really silly videos, and I realized quickly that it helps me cope with having a chronic illness. So I kind of stuck with making comedic yet educational videos. And yeah, through that, I ended up meeting thousands of people with a chronic illness, multiple chronic illnesses, not just RA, lots of different chronic illnesses. And through that, because I was able to connect with young people, it also really helped me mentally. And ever since 2018, I've been making videos. And now the community is really large and vast. And it's just so nice to connect with people who really understand what we're going through. So yeah.
Yes, and I was telling you before we came on that some of your videos have helped me in my chronic illness journey. So it's really like I am not a person who's super comfortable in front of the camera, which feels odd to say as I'm in front of a camera recording myself right now. But I'm always in awe of people that are so genuinely comfortable being their authentic selves in front of the camera, and how many people have taken to what you've shared. And that's actually why I reached out to you, because of what you share, how you share it, and the comfortability that you have, because the topic that I chose for us today isn't quite as comfortable for everybody. But I think that's exactly why these conversations need to happen. And you've touched on some of these conversations in videos as well. So I know that this is not brand new to you, but it is to our space. So talking today about intimacy and chronic illness, I think for our community in particular, with a lot of GI issues and, devices attached to us, and just the overall not feeling well, how do you talk to your partner about that? How do you talk to a new partner about that? Is there a gray area? Do we have to, go all the way to home base, or is there something else that we can do in between that might be more comfortable? So, as a person with chronic illness and with RA, you deal with a lot of pain, a lot of swelling. So it's different, but the same. So do you have, I'll say, a start topic start piece of advice that helped you when you were starting to kind of approach this conversation or these issues after you were diagnosed with a chronic illness?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love talking about this because, again, yeah, not everybody talks about it, but I want to normalize this conversation because it's
Yes,
so important,
exactly.
especially because yes, I was struggling with this at a time and I didn't verbalize it and I didn't
Hmm.
really understand what I was going through. So to listen to this hopefully will help somebody who is in the middle of going through all this. So basically, intimacy and chronic illness. And I think a lot of us, if not most of us, will go through this. Being a young adult and starting
Mm-hmm.
new relationships or already being in a relationship, it's very important. So for me personally, I was already with my partner for many years before I started to have this problem. So it can happen in the middle of a relationship too, which is why
Mm-hmm.
it's so important to talk about. So when I started to decline with my health, course, many people listening are probably going to agree. You don't want to feel sexy. You don't want to get intimate because you're not feeling yourself. Okay, you're in pain. All you want to do is sleep. Yeah, you want to be horizontal, but not with another person. You just want to be by yourself. Okay, so so it's really hard to get that sexual, I guess, what am I trying to say? To get that motivation back, to get that sex appeal back, to just feel sexy
Mm-hmm.
in general, to get that back is really difficult. It's really easy to just let it go.
Yeah.
So many of us will let it go for months, for years, and it's really difficult to communicate with your partner that you just lost your motivation to have sex. It's just not there. It's not the top priority. The top priority is to feel better, and that's it. And you may have
Yeah.
symptoms of your medication, like methotrexate that we talked about earlier. You're nauseous,
Mm-hmm.
you're dizzy, you have brain fog. The last thing you want to do is get laid, okay?
Absolutely.
Like, even though we're probably going to feel better afterwards. But so I guess to start off this conversation, my number one piece of advice to get started is to feel sexy alone. To feel sexy by yourself. Okay. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need your partner involved in this. Of course, the conversation will come down the line, but finding that motivation to make yourself feel good is priority. So my favorite part is the what I call experimental phase. So experimenting what makes you feel good by yourself to start at first. So whether that's something to spark that motivation to feel sexy,
Yeah.
whether it's getting some new lingerie for yourself, whether it's reading a really smutty book, that's what helped me get back into my sex drive, whether it's getting a new toy and experimenting on yourself, just that experimental phase, trying to get that sex motivation back, that sex drive back is really important. And again, you don't have to do this with your partner. This can just be by yourself to find out what gets you going, because it's the hardest thing is what gets us going. Okay, like what gets
Mm-hmm.
us in the mood when we don't feel good. So I always say, like, when you're alone, like in bed, relax, prop up some pillows, get a sex
Set
toy
the
that,
mood.
isn't hard on your joints. Yeah, set the mood, set the mood.
Mm-hmm.
Get the candles, get the heating pads, if you will, like whatever you need to do to set
Yeah.
the mood and see what gets you excited. So that's my number one piece of advice for getting started is to find what turns you on, because it's really important when you don't feel good. So to find what turns you on is my number one starting piece of advice. So that's where I would begin.
Yeah. And I think why that's so important, just listening how you put that out of not necessarily normalizing it, but kind of starting from like A to B to C to D to kind of work that into your life again. And really, like, something that maybe turned you on prior to illness might not be like possible once you've been diagnosed, depending on what you're diagnosed with. Maybe a favorite position is just not workable anymore. Maybe it's your joints, maybe it's a stomach ache, maybe it's something like, all of those things have to change. So it really is so important. And I think to be okay with yourself, to figure out what works for yourself. And I know that that might be uncomfortable for some people because that might be new territory for them to explore where they didn't have to do that before. It kind of just, you have a partner, you find what works for you, and then you go off on your way. But then when you remove the partner and you add some other things in there, you kind of have to find yourself again, not just sexually and not just in that intimate way, but really to kind of just look and say, who am I right now? And start from there. Who am I in this relationship? Who am I with myself? What am I comfortable with? What am I not comfortable with? Because at least I can think that it would be incredibly horrible for your partner to try to do something because that didn't work for you because we were too scared to be vocal, and that could put you at risk, it could put your partner at risk, and it's not going to help your communication either. And if it doesn't work, either you or your partner might feel like a
100% agree.
failure, and that's not going to help with any of the conversation either.
Mm-mm. No, I 100% agree. And then, yeah, doing that by yourself and finding what makes you feel good is also going to give you confidence. It's going
Yeah.
to give you confidence for when you do introduce your partner and you're like, you know what? This is the position I have to do because I know
Hmm.
I did the research. So it's only going to make you confident and feel good about yourself. So
Yeah.
highly encourage finding what gets your sex drive back alone at first, just to give you that confidence, that courage, and to also see what gets you going. Because it's never easy to start something and you're just not in the mood. So finding something that gets you going is going to help before your partner shows up to your house. You know, like if it's a
Hmm.
smutty book, if I know I'm going to have sexy time with my partner, I'm going to read a smutty book and I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Maybe it's watching a video, just something. Maybe it's taking a Epsom salt bath. I don't know, something to get you in the mood. Because yeah, it's actually proven that sex helps people with chronic illness. So it's really good for us. It's just getting in the mood. It's kind of like doing a workout. Like you don't want to do it, but you're glad when it's done, you know, like, and you're going to be glad during it too, but it's hard to, get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so like when your whole world just turned upside down because of this chronic illness and you have to make all these other adjustments, it's kind of like this is the last thing on your mind, right? Because you have all the other things that come first and all the other things you have to take care of. So this might intentionally go on the back burner because you're just trying to survive. You're trying to manage all of those things, but it can't stay on the back burner forever, especially if you have a partner that you had that type of relationship with prior. To keep that in the back, I think is just that's damaging for our psyche. It's damaging for the relationship. And it's just something that, I mean, even I'm not as open of a book as you are, but I'm pretty open about a lot of these things. And even I'm like, how do I tell my husband like how I'm feeling
Mhm.
right now? And that's my husband, the person that I feel so completely authentically be myself with. And even sometimes I'm like, how do I say that this is how I'm feeling right now? Because I don't feel good and I can't do this. And the more we talk about it, the more it's not taboo, the more we're like, you know what? Just because you have a chronic illness doesn't mean you don't get to live your life. You just have to live it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my second thing is the communication with your partner, because I'm sure many of your partners are going to be like, they don't find me attractive anymore. That's usually what it is. I mean, my partner was like, why don't you want to have sex anymore? Like, do you not want to do this relationship? Like, sex is a huge part of a relationship, unless you're asexual, and that's fine too. But it's a huge part of a lot of our relationships.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, no, that is not the case. So having communication about it is so important. Saying, hey, I'm never in the mood. I am always in pain. This is on the back burner. This is the last thing I want to do. But you
Hmm.
can tell your partner that you're willing to work on it and you're willing to do that research. You're willing to find what works for you. And I'm sure if your partner loves you, they're going to say, hey, let me help with that research. Let me find what
Yep.
helps work too. Like you can do it together and just let them know, like, hey, I have to be on the bottom. I can't move. I have to
Hmm.
prop some pillows. I have to do this. And I'm sure if your partner loves you, they will oblige and do all of those things. And if they don't, you need to move on
Hmm.
because please. But yeah, so like having that communication is key because your partner may think, oh my God, they don't like me. They don't want to be with me anymore. When really we're just in pain and we're just
Yeah.
tired. We're tired all the time. Fatigue is the big thing. So letting your partner know, hey, it's not you, it's me. I know that that saying comes a lot. It's no, hold up. Let me rephrase that. It's not you. It's my chronic illness inside of me that's
Yeah.
doing this, not me. I don't want to have anything to do with this. But yeah, having that conversation is so important. And I think by you and I talking about this, letting
Hmm.
people know it's not taboo and it's okay to talk about sex. I scream it up to the rooftops. I am very open and you guys can ask me anything. But yeah, it's hard sometimes having that conversation with your partner. Like it's easier to talk to a stranger than it is your
Yeah.
partner. But yeah, so
Absolutely.
sitting down and having that conversation or laying down and having that conversation is very important. So highly recommend. It's difficult, but talking it out with them. And if they don't want to talk it through, they're not the right person for you.
Yeah. No, completely. And one of the things that I felt when I had my feeding tube, especially, I was like, I feel like I can't be attractive anymore, that this
Mm,
changed me. Like you see these things on me, like how could you still be attracted to me? And
mm.
now without a feeding tube, I have two belly buttons. So I'm like, how can you be attracted to me? I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I look different, my body feels different to me. How can you still be attracted to that? And that was all my assumption of how someone else felt. And it was a lot of my, internalized feelings, all of my anxieties, all of how I was seeing myself, but not how my partner sees me. And
Mm-hmm.
making those assumptions hurt that part of our relationship because I thought that, this was how he felt, or this was what I was assuming that he felt. And when I finally said that out loud, he was like, no,
Mm-hmm.
like looking
Yeah.
at me like, how are you thinking that? And I'm like,
Yeah.
but it's just one of those things where I'm different now. So I assume that different means bad.
Yeah.
And we know logically that that's not true, but emotionally, it's so hard to break that stereotype that because we're different, or we say things different, we look different, our bodies feel different, or we can't do it in the perfect way, that must mean that we can't do that, or that our partners no longer want us. More often than not, that's not the case. And we need to stop assuming that and just say, hey, I feel a little awkward about this conversation, even though like we've done this before. It now feels awkward because I'm calling attention to it.
Yeah.
Have the conversation anyway. You'll feel better when it's done.
Oh my God, absolutely. And I'm like you said, I'm sure 99% of the time your partner is going to be like,
Not a problem.
that is not a problem. Trust and believe it is not a problem. And that's why I highly encourage falling in love sexually with yourself. That's why I'm saying like do it alone before you go back with your partner, because really it's more of a fight with ourselves. Like
Yeah.
when you say you don't find yourself attractive anymore because of everything you've been through. That's why I highly, highly encourage finding that sex drive alone and finding your sexual love for yourself, because it's hard. I mean, it's hard even if you don't have a chronic illness, even if you didn't have a feeding tube. It's with every, I'm going to say woman, with every, everybody, mostly like with women, we have a harder time dealing with it. I can't speak for men, but it's just really difficult and we're always down on ourselves. So finding your sexy,
Mm.
getting some lingerie for you, not for your
Hmm.
partner. I'm talking, I want you to feel sexy in your body. Okay. Feeding tube, anything like that. I want you to feel sexy with it. So if that means ordering some lingerie for yourself, getting dressed up, maybe you would do a full face of makeup, just
Hmm.
looking without your partner does not need to be involved in this process. This is
Hmm.
only for you. Okay. Only for you. Getting dressed up for yourself, getting lingerie on for yourself, having a date with your smutty book looking cute for yourself, because you need to find yourself sexy first. But yes, have that conversation with your partner. And I promise you, again, if they tell you, yeah, I'm not attracted to you anymore, they need to go out the door. Okay. So
Hmm.
it's good to have that conversation anyway. But I promise 99% of the time, they're like, that is completely false. I love you. Let's hit the sheets. Like I
Hmm.
promise you, they don't care. So it's really just falling back in love with yourself and finding that
Yeah.
sexy for you and yourself alone.
Yeah. I think really that conversation is the most important thing to start with. We can't say that enough. But the other side of that, I think for me, it's like the days that are a big no. Like no matter
Mm-hmm.
what happens, no matter how much you talk about it, no matter what you do, some days are just and that happens with, like you said, for people who don't have chronic illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes things just happen and you
Yeah.
can't do something. Have you gotten to a different, like, I'll say, level of intimacy that you felt that you were able to get with your partner that was not sexual? That was something that helped you guys feel close on the bad days when you weren't able to take it to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. And those days are just as important. Like connecting with one another when it can't be sexual because of a flare, or because, again, like you said, it's just a bad day. It's a no day. So
Hmm.
finding an activity that you two love to do together that can be intimate, and that can be something in a conversation. Like you guys come up with something. It could
Yeah.
be, setting the scene, laying in bed and just listening to some music, watching a movie, doing something intimate, and spending alone time together is just as important as, having those sexual times. So honestly, like it's kind of like having one of those flare dates. I've talked about this before, like doing flare friendly dating, like flare friendly working out is what I promote, but flare friendly dating just as important with people who are already in relationships. Doing a flare friendly intimate thing together, and it doesn't have to be sexual. And if it does lead to something sexual, just having your partner understand and be open that it could stop at any time. Like I'm open to maybe doing this, but this is a no, it can stop at any time. But if it gets there, great. If it doesn't, it's great too. But yes, yeah, communication, I know we keep saying it, but it's so important. But yeah, having those flare friendly, intimate moments is so important and comfortable, especially for partners just dating, like whether it's your first date and you're flaring
Hmm.
or you've been together for years. It's super important to establish that.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic because it drives home that emotional intimacy that I think will only amplify the physical intimacy. Like the more that you are connected on other levels, I think that it will just make all the other times a little bit better, even if you don't get all the way there. And I think that all or nothing mindset too, I've gotten stuck in that. And I know that a lot of people have too, that there's a my mom used to say when she was teaching me, she'll probably kill me for putting this out on the internet, but when she was teaching me, as you get older and you have questions and you're like, what is sex, mom? Like, where do babies come from? What happens? It's like, you get that explained to you. But that's way down here. She used to say that there's a lot of different chapters. Like it's a book, you always are adding chapters. There's all these different things. And I think we forget that there are so many chapters. You don't always have to go to the last one. There's all these different things in between that are just as good. They can feel just as good. They
Hmm.
can be just as intimate. They can be just as emotional, just as physical. And they don't necessarily require the same effort, the same movement, the same physical touch. And I think we get so caught up in needing to go all the way to the end that we forget that there's all these other steps that are just as good, just as
Hmm.
pleasurable, just as
Oh my
happy,
God.
just as comfortable. And even those, like, it's, oh, well, that's not what I want to talk about. That's not what I want to do. Or no, that's not it. Or I can't do that. Or I'm afraid to try that. I think we get so deep in our own heads for what is okay, what we should be doing, because we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm over here like shaking my head if you're not watching this. Yes, I 100% agree. And that's why experimenting with your partner is so important too. There are many, many ways to find pleasure versus just going straight for penetration. Like in some of us, especially me, when I was avoiding sex because I was in pain,
Hmm.
I ended up having pain with penetration. It just was something like, oh my God, I don't want to add pain to my pain. Like this is absolutely not. So there were times where we would have to get creative. And in
Hmm.
time, I ended up like having to go to a pelvic floor specialist. Like I'm talking, I was seriously committed. Okay. Like
Yeah.
I was like, we're doing this. But yeah, no, I had pain with penetration. And so we had to find other ways to go slow or to just avoid it completely and do other things. Yeah. Cause there's many chapters. You don't have to get to the
Hmm.
final stage and that's okay. But yeah, that communication and that experimenting. And I promise you, your partner is going to probably be like, I volunteer to experiment with you. Like we will do all of the experimenting. So yeah, like you don't have to jump to it. Like just have fun and find out what feels good for you.
Hmm.
And if it hurts, okay, then we need to change this up and try something else. Get some toys. Toys are fun. I have like 10 toys, okay? And I don't just use them on myself. My partner and I play with them, okay? So find some toys, do it with your partner, order some toys online. It's really fun. And just experiment with your partner and see what works. And maybe on those flare days, you can do those flare sex moves, right? And
Hmm.
it's still sex. You don't have to have penetration. You know, I think that's like a stupid term. Like you can still
Yeah.
have sex and it doesn't have to be penetration. Like do those flare friendly sex days, you know, like and get those toys. And there's many different things that you can do. If you want more details, slide into my DMs. I love to talk about it, but just, don't I want to say like this isn't taboo. Like go into a sex shop. I love the people that work there. And if you have any questions, they will call them on the phone if you're nervous to go in person. Like they will tell you all of
That's
the fun things
amazing.
that you could do. Yes. Like if you want to do something flare friendly, they have toys that have remotes. Oh,
Interesting.
yes. So yeah, if you want to do that with your partner, that sounds fun too. Give a sex place a call and they'll recommend all these different toys that you can use. So highly recommend using toys, especially for flare days.
Yeah. I like, even just, there's a lot of things that I have thought about, you Google stuff, right? And I
Hmm.
don't mean like the dirty Google stuff, but
Yeah, yeah.
and you know what? If that's what you are doing, that's totally okay
Fine, yeah.
too. But like for me, I was like, what do I do if if I'm really nauseous, but like I feel good enough, but I still am nauseous. Like I don't want to vomit on my partner. I don't
Yeah.
want to feel worse. Or if
Yeah.
you're extremely bloated, you were talking about pain earlier, like I earlier this year, I've had a hysterectomy. I think I've mentioned that in a
Hmm.
previous episode, but I had a hysterectomy. I left my cervix. And because there was nothing wrong with it. So I'm like, why take an organ if there's nothing wrong with it? Right. And earlier this year, I had it removed because I started bleeding and
Mm,
had pain. And
mm,
I'm like, I haven't had a period in years and I shouldn't be experiencing pain. So what is the problem? And thankfully, my doctor is amazing. And I was able to verbalize this without feeling awkward or to say, like, I'm not going to go to the doctor because this is weird and I don't want to talk about it. Like, no,
mm.
that's the exact moment you need to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this too is because as much as we're afraid to sometimes talk about our partners, talk about this with our partners, talking about this with your doctor sometimes, like we don't bring this up. It's like you have a question, they might be able to answer it for you. And if I hadn't have gone to the doctor, if I hadn't have had that conversation, I might still be dealing with pain. And that's not even, we're not even talking about because of sex. We're just talking about just regular pain. Like
Yeah.
you're not supposed to be bleeding. Like
No.
just because we're talking about something that's internal in my vagina, that does not mean that it's something awkward to talk to about the doctor. That's the exact moment you're supposed to be talking about it. So I think about that too, where we're like, well, it's weird, so I don't want to talk about it. Well, you know what? All of these things are normal. Like everybody poops, everybody who is careful and wants to will have sex. I'm like, not everybody does, so I have
Yeah.
to have to fix that one a little bit.
Yeah.
But like everybody talks about it. Everybody
Hmm.
does this. It's just not something that is so open because it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like even just the words to describe it sometimes are like, oh, I can't say that in front of anybody. It's the friggin' doctor or
It's
it's
the
your partner.
doctor.
They have one, they've seen it, they've done all these things. Like we don't need to pretend and giggle. I mean, we can still giggle, but we
Yeah.
don't need to giggle just because we said a word. It's
Exactly.
it's
They've heard
yeah.
it. The
Yeah.
doctors have heard it. Like you guys, I've asked my doctor questions where I was even nervous to ask, and the doctor didn't even laugh, didn't even register. It
Probably
was
didn't
just
even
like,
flinch.
nope, didn't even flinch, just answer my question right away. And I was like, oh, okay. Like they don't care, okay? And you know, it's not like they're in your bedroom or they're in your they're in your life. They don't care.
Hmm.
They hear it every day. So yeah, no, it's really important, and it's sad because like us, you know, I would say women again, but like no, we grew up in a way, millennials, you know, Gen Z, or they're getting this a little bit better, but
Hmm.
especially millennials, how we grew up in Gen X, how we grew up is that we were just told to like, shh, we don't talk
Hmm.
about it. Like we do
Yep.
not talk about it, and if you do, you're a whore. Like it's
Yeah.
unfortunately how we were raised, and so it's really hard. And also, like many years ago, like hundreds, not hundreds, maybe like decades ago, you know, we've never been able to talk about it. So it's still, I hate that it's taboo still, or it's not,
Yeah.
but it feels taboo in many countries. I mean, I grew up in Saudi Arabia. Okay, we could not talk about it. So, but yeah, it's really hard. But yes, being honest with your doctor and your partner is so important.
Yeah. And I think as a female as well, or, we're taught, like you said, for our age range, and for females, I feel like in our age range, we were taught that like we're not supposed to talk about enjoying sex.
Yeah,
Like,
yes.
so it's like you talked about it secretly with your girlfriends, or, maybe you talked about it with your doctor, or maybe, you read a book about it or did that. And all those things are fine. But like, there's still that like internalized shame around that
Hmm.
too, that I think that also comes into the conversation when you're disabled,
Yeah.
because now you've got like a double internalized shame of like, well, I'm disabled now, or I have a chronic illness and I can't enjoy this anymore, or
Hmm.
I shouldn't, or I'm not sexy, or I can't talk, like all of those things. Like it's nothing to be ashamed about. And that's something like with our entire podcast here, like I want people to, get education. We talk about different topics and learn about different things related to chronic illness and gastroparesis. But I also wanted to touch on the things that nobody else is talking about, because I know that if I Googled it, somebody else has Googled it. If I was
Yeah.
afraid to talk about it, somebody else was afraid to talk about it. So we're going to talk about it. So maybe somebody else will go to the doctor and say, I need to have a conversation about this. Can you help me
Hmm.
do this? Or maybe somebody will feel empowered to say, well, they did it so I can talk to my partner about it too. Or maybe this is my first step, is to fall back in love with who I am and what I love and what feels good to me and all of those things, because everybody should feel good about themselves and they should be able to enjoy whatever they want to enjoy with consent
Yep.
for
Yep.
themselves physically.
Yes.
And, I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. Like, again, my mom will probably listen to this. I'll give her second props here, that this was not taboo for us to talk about in my
That's nice.
household. Like, I was able to ask questions. I never felt shame for saying, what is this? Or how do I ask this question? Or mom, can you help me understand what this or that is? Or what chapter does this fall under?
Yeah.
I never felt uncomfortable with that conversation. So I have to give her props where it's due,
That
that
is
this is
fantastic.
something partially why I'm like, okay, I know other people want to do this. And, you know, I don't know why that has to be such a thing. We don't need to make it taboo. We need to talk about it. We need to be open about it. And hopefully somebody, after we're done chatting, will say, all right, now I can ask these questions because someone else asked these questions.
Yeah, it's important. And honestly, it's how asking these questions, I literally asked my doctor, like, I hate that I have pain with sex. And so then we talked about it, and that's how I went to the pelvic floor therapist, and it really
Mhm.
helped.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't be afraid to speak up about it. Sorry, my cat's on my lap. Don't be afraid to speak up about it, and ask your doctor, your partner, because you deserve to have that sex drive come back. Like, you
Yeah.
deserve to feel pleasure being chronically ill. I know I know it feels taboo and it's hard. It is really hard to break out of that cycle that we're in, but it's just so important. It's so important. Sorry, my cat's getting off my lap. It's so, so important. And I
We welcome
highly encourage.
cats here.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is Cooper. He's an orange tabby. He's
So
17.
cute.
But yes, no, I hope anyone listening, this gives you the confidence to speak with your
Mhm.
partner or speak with your doctor, because you deserve to get that sex drive back. And it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time and it takes work, and there will probably be tears, and
Mhm.
frustration, and that's totally normal. But yeah, I no longer have pain with sex. So honestly, that's a huge win for me. And it was through working with my doctors and working with my partner and
Mhm.
finding that sexiness, finding what makes me feel sexy. So, highly
Yeah.
encourage you guys to do that and to take that step, because it's not easy. And I give you a high five and cheers and twerks for doing so, because we're over here cheering you on, because it's not easy. It's not easy to break that cycle.
Yeah. And I know you had just mentioned something about like sex drive too, and thinking about not just the physical side of that, but like the side effects of medications, like
Hmm.
that you're on, that now there's new, combinations of things, there's new side effects, all of those that you have to navigate around. We talked about the methotrexate earlier, and I mean, I don't need to tell you how it feels the next day to live on
No.
that drug, so going through that, like, I could not manage very well. And then there's the side effects of other medications, and they all kind of come crashing down to a point where, like, you just don't care. And that's so, like, when I realized, like, what I was kind of feeling, I felt so sad,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I feel like I've lost a connection to myself. This is something now that requires brain power and work, when
Yeah.
in reality, it should just be like, boom, it happens, or
It
boom,
should
this
be
is how I
natural.
feel, because
Yeah.
it is a natural thing. So
Hmm.
you'd think it would just naturally happen. But with all these other chemicals, pain, issues that combine into that, you're like, I just don't even care. I just want to go to bed.
Hmm.
And I don't want to say that you shouldn't feel that way or you can't feel that way, because we can't really help it. But it's really sad that we do feel that way. And I don't want anyone to feel that way. So I think just acknowledging that you're feeling that to yourself too is a good, if you are feeling that, not
Yeah.
everybody does. But even just a depression can set that back. And,
Hmm.
thyroid issues can set that back. All these things combined, like, we have had everything pushed against us in this situation to say that you shouldn't have this, you can't have this, and it'll never feel good again. And we need to hopefully break out of that mindset to say, no, I just need to do this differently, or this is still something that I care about. If you did care about it and it was important to you, I don't want you to lose that, because no, like we said earlier, everybody deserves to feel good in a way that makes
Hmm.
them feel good. And You just have to find a way to make it work, which unfortunately is more work,
It's more
which
work.
is
It's going to be
unfair,
work. Hmm.
but the payoff is really
It's
good.
really good. No, really, like methotrexate single-handedly took my sex drive away. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's science because of, I don't know if it was the side effects that took it away or that it's clinically proven to do that, but it lowered my sex drive like crazy. Okay.
Mm,
And it will be work. That's why I had to read smutty books. I had to do something, but it is going to require work in the beginning,
yeah.
unfortunately. But it's kind of like healthy lifestyle, right? Like when we get diagnosed with a chronic illness, usually our mind goes, we have to eat better, we have to exercise, we have to do this. This is just like that. We need to add that to the list. This is self-care, and we need to add that.
Absolutely.
But like you said earlier, you don't need to go, I'm gonna use this. You don't need to go balls deep with it, okay? You can take your time, okay? Just like I'm a personal trainer, and I say, like, when you're getting back into fitness, you don't need to do CrossFit. You don't need to work out 7 times or 6 days a week. Like, take your
Hmm.
time. If you're just starting to work out after getting diagnosed, start with 2 days a week, right? Like, take it
Yeah.
slow. You don't need to follow a whole program. Same with finding your sex drive. You don't need to go crazy. You don't need to go balls deep. You don't need to have sex every single day. If it starts with reading one smutty book, maybe 3 times a week, start with that.
Hmm.
It's self-care, and add it to something. I'm thinking of like Atomic Habits. Add it to something like when you take a bath, read a smutty book. When
Yeah.
you put lotion on your body, touch yourself. I don't know, like do something that will make you feel good. And again, this doesn't have to involve your partner. You're trying to find sexiness within yourself at first, but yeah, don't go crazy at first. Like you said, you don't need to have sex right away. You don't need to do it right away. Do
Hmm.
something that makes you feel good and just think of it as like a self-care thing. Just like how we need to
Yeah.
eat a little bit better, but you don't want to go crazy. Just how we need to exercise more, but again, you don't want to go crazy.
Hmm.
Self-care, having sex, feeling good, orgasming, very important. So
Yeah.
definitely work on it, but it is going to feel like work. Like it felt like work when penetration hurt for me, but now it's amazing. So it's going to take time. But yeah, I highly recommend working on it.
Looking at that out of a lens of self-care is so smart.
Hmm.
So incredibly smart, because just adding that back in, and even again, habit stacking of putting that in, it stops feeling like work when it's just something that you are doing. And it's so interesting to look at it that way, because I never thought about that. Like, you say that and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot
Yeah,
of
it's
sense.
self-care.
Oh, okay. That
Yep.
that totally that totally tracks. I like this idea. I'm like, why, in all the times that I've thought about this, why did I not look at it that way? Because it
Hmm.
did. It felt like work. And
Yeah.
looking like I'm training for a half marathon again, and like looking at that, I went out for my first run a couple weeks ago, and I got half a mile in. I'm like, this is torture. There
Yeah.
would have been no way I could have run 13 miles going back into that. So it's the same thing as you were
Hmm.
saying. You don't go from 0 to 60, because that is a damn good way to hurt yourself. No matter if we're
Absolutely.
talking about sex, working out, anything,
Yeah.
you going 0 to 60 that quickly is
Not good.
not safe.
Please don't do that. Please.
So to do that in a step, one little bit at a time, makes so much more sense. It's easier, it's attainable, it's sustainable. And I think you learn more doing it that way. I mean, you can
Hmm.
learn the hard way if you want to not listen to a word that we've said.
Yeah.
I will not promise to say I told you so at the end
Yeah.
of that,
Yeah.
but it's so true that there's all of these things in between, the steps to take. And if we stop looking at it as work and something that we can do that's enjoyable,
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might not be enjoyable at first, but there's a lot of things that you don't enjoy on the first time. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, most people's first time too is generally not something to
Trash.
write home about, right?
Yeah. It's
So
usually
why?
trash.
So if you look at it that way, it's
Yeah.
like you had to keep trying, right? To figure out what worked. It's the same concept, but we just kind of get so lost in the noise and just really stop focusing on what really matters. And it's the relationship with yourself and your
Hmm.
partner, if you have a partner,
Hmm.
or whoever in your life is part of this journey with you. And that's
Yeah.
so important.
Yeah.
And we just forget about that. And it's like you get into the situation of survival mode, that again, you forget to enjoy some of the moments that are in between that survival mode.
Absolutely. And I want to say, even if you don't have a partner, this is just as important. Like, even if you're
Absolutely.
single and by yourself, or maybe you don't want a partner, maybe you're asexual, you don't want a partner, this is just as important. You need to, do that self-care for yourself. I just want to make that clear. This is not just for
Mhm.
people with partners. Yes.
Yeah. It's I'm just so glad that we were able to have this conversation, that you were so open about this, way before. I think it was one of your videos actually that inspired me to want to do this. And I was like, who can I talk to? And I'm like, why would I talk to anybody else? I will talk to the woman who inspired all of this.
I
So,
love that. Thank you.
it's just that openness that I think we all really need. It's that honesty, that authenticity, in sharing pieces of your story, and whoever you need to share it with. That's really so important. And honestly, just being honest with yourself. Just to be honest with yourself, to say that either this is something I need to work on, this is something I need to address, and stop ignoring it, because that's not doing anybody any favors. And
Absolutely.
that just makes me sad, and it's something I still have to work on in my own head about, my own internalized issues around doing this and how I feel, and just trying to remind myself that I don't need to put so much pressure on myself to be a certain way, because that's how I was years ago, or that's how it was easier years ago. That person doesn't exist anymore either. So
Hmm.
I need to stop comparing, what is now to what was then, because then was then, and it's gone. I can't get that back. So I need to work with what I have now. And I think that, even just for me, recognizing that was a big step in the right direction of trying hard not to blame myself for everything, because once you start blaming yourself and you get mad at yourself, that doesn't help your sex drive either. Now,
It
does
does
it?
not help your sex drive. And maybe it's not you, it's your chronic illness. Okay, give your chronic illness a name if you need to. Blame it on them, not you.
It's it's just, thank you so much for all of
Thank
this
you.
conversation. And I know you said it earlier, but if anybody has questions, now they all know who to ask. So I
Please
apologize in advance if anyone bombards you.
slide into the DMs. I will talk about sex all day long. I'll give you all of the tips and tricks, and pun intended, and all of the good toys that you can get. Like, I love talking about it. I should have been a sex therapist, honestly. Like, it's just, I love talking about it, and it's not taboo to me, and it shouldn't be taboo to anybody. And I just want to preach it from the rooftops. But thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
I love talking about this, and I hope we helped your listeners. And to those listening, make sure to go home and pleasure yourself, because it's very important. It's self-care.
Yes, it absolutely is. Thank you.
Thanks.